A lot of times we see celebrities in the front row. Well, maybe the show manager doesn't know who's shown up and who doesn't because they're so busy getting the models ready that they don't know that Kim Kardashian hasn't arrived yet. And these are all things I feel so unglamorous when you think about a fashion show from a reader's perspective, but it's critical because you don't want Kim Kardashian showing up halfway through your show. One, that's disruptive, and two, that's a huge missed opportunity. So it's our job to make sure that our software is kind of powering all that behind the scenes.
Welcome to the Fashionista Network. Welcome to the Fashionista Network.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Fashionista Network. I'm Steph Saltzman, Fashionista's Beauty and Style Director. I'm joined today with Allison Bringé, Chief Marketing Officer for Launchmetrics. Launchmetrics is just so crucial to the way the fashion industry operates right now. So welcome, Allison. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me.
So thank you so much. I know this timing, we're so lucky to have you right now. Really a very, very busy time for Fashionista and for Launchmetrics. So we're glad to be having this combo. But before we get into all of that and the work that you're doing now, I'd love to start out with just getting a bit on your background. You have just this really amazing background and career in fashion. So can you tell me a bit about how you got started, how you first were drawn to the fashion industry, and how you wound up at Launchmetrics?
It feels like so long ago. I started my career in New York with New York Fashion Week. So it's kind of like a coming of age story, I guess you could say. I started, working at a small jewelry and accessories company right out of college. And it was amazing. And why it was amazing, not just the experience I got, but it really was the reason I decided I love America. I've done a lot of internships. I thought I was ready to start my career, but I really realized if you want to go far in fashion, you need to have this multinational experience. And from there, I met the CEO of Sector Group. They're the company that does all the watches for Valentino and Moschino. He was talking to me about a master's program in Milan. And he's like, have you ever thought of moving to Italy? And I was like, what person has not thought of moving to Paris or Milan? I ended up applying to this program. I got accepted. And it was such a great experience because I think what I missed from my university studies and my internships in America was really like that exposure to people from other markets, other countries that spoke other languages. And New York is a melting pot city, but the truth is it's a lot of Americans from all over America. It really gave me exposure, like how do I work with a team from China or someone that's German? You think it's just like working with any other American, but the truth is we all have these cultural differences. And I've realized that experience has made me such a good manager today because I understand the styles of working in different countries and the customs are so different. So I did my master's, moved back to New York, and I started working with IMG. It was 2 or 3 weeks before New York Fashion Week, and everyone's scrambling, as you guys probably do too, for extra help. Some people are hiring full-time, some people are hiring freelance for Fashion Week. IMG, funny enough, of all my offers, was the only one that was like, it's just for the month of pre and post Fashion Week, but would you want to come on board? And I was like, who wouldn't want to work at the largest event in the US when it comes to fashion? And it was one of the best experiences because obviously that parlayed into a full-time role. And I was with IMG several years, and I was part of the team that oversaw the communications plan from moving from Bryant Park, where Fashion Week had been for so long since its inception with the CFDA, to Lincoln Center, which obviously it's not there. And Fashion Week once again has evolved and changed, but it really was a great time to be there and a great moment to be a part of Fashion Week. I worked at IMG for a while. I went on to work with Net-a-Porter when they opened their offices on Fifth Avenue. And that was incredible because I got to work with Natalie Massenet, who really was a visionary. The idea of buying $10,000 Oscar de la Renta dresses online, no one would have imagined would be successful. And sure enough, those things would sell out within 24 hours. So it was an exciting time to be there. And then eventually I got really, antsy living in New York. I wanted to move back to Europe. At that time, Fashion GPS, who is now Launchmetrics, I had worked with them when I was at IMG. So as part of that move from Bryant Park to Lincoln Center, we wanted to modernize the event. So for those of you that have not had the pain or pleasure of working in fashion when email was just not really a thing. How it used to work is you would get an invitation mailed to you or faxed to you, because obviously lots of people still used fax machines. And then your assistant would either need to fill out a card and mail it back, kind of like a wedding, or fax in your RSVPs. And then all of those other bits, like your seating assignment, would either be couriered over to your office or faxed over to your assistant. So it was really like working in an analog moment. When you show up at Fashion Week, there were long lines and you'd have to check in with someone that had a clipboard and they'd write your seating assignment on a post-it or a postcard, I should say. And it was crazy. Like I remember how long people had to wait to line up. Like the Michael Kors show, you had to like not only arrive like 40 minutes before, but then you had to stand in this like ridiculous queue, and you would have editors from Vogue and Elle and Harper's and even the New York Times Women's Wear. Like they were all standing there. I remember Bridget Foley one year, she broke her leg. And some brands were like, well, what do we do? This is how we do check-in. So it was just really another world. And so we hired Fashion GPS at the time to come in and really modernize Fashion Week and turn it into what you guys know is like airport style check-in, right? And I remember everyone, WSJ actually did a story on it. Like, will this work for fashion? Will the fashion industry actually believe in that not personal touch? And if you had to tell any editor, including yourself, I'm sure, like, hey, we're going to invite you to the show, but you're going to stand outside for an hour in New York in February waiting to get into the tents, like you'd be like, thanks, but no thanks.
I'm going to need a little bit more. Oh, that's amazing. I think it is so interesting, though, to hear the many important ways that fashion has changed in this short time period. And just kind of you being at these crucial moments in fashion. Obviously, the move of the location of Fashion Week was a huge moment for American and New York Fashion Week. And, you know, to be kind of in the ground floor of Net-a-Porter when it's really taking off and kind of this new way of technology coming into the fashion space. I think that's so interesting. It's still an evolution. And I know that's something that you probably work on a lot. Like there are still pain points. There are still moments where maybe the tech doesn't work. There are still lines. There are still accessibility problems at many shows. So it's interesting to hear all the ways that things have changed and honestly, a lot of the ways they haven't. So can you tell me, and kind of just for our viewers who may not really have an understanding of just how impactful Launchmetrics is during Fashion Week, during Fashion Month, what does Launchmetrics do now? And why is that work so crucial to the work that all of the rest of us are doing?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, Launchmetrics is this kind of merger between a company called Fashion GPS and a company called Agure that was based in France. And together we've come together to be Launchmetrics and really build what is the backbone of all the things that happen behind the scenes during a fashion brand's seasonal campaigns for the PR and marketing departments. So specifically during Fashion Week, actually throughout the year, right? These brands are using our data from anything from the operational things like organizing a fashion show, tracking their samples that they send to these celebrities or influencers, or the samples from the runway that go to the magazines after for photo shoots. And then, of course, what everyone is like crazy about nowadays, the metrics. So all of the rankings, who was the best show during Fashion Week, who went viral on social media, all of those metrics are coming out of Launchmetrics. The less glamorous side, but the most important side and role that Launchmetrics plays during Fashion Week is all of the support of event organization. Worldwide, about 90 to 95% of the major fashion shows during New York, London, Paris, and Milan are using Launchmetrics events platform to manage their show. So what does that mean? Maybe if you're going to the movies, you're buying like a ticket on the AMC website to get into that show. Obviously, for a fashion show, it's much different. It's all about invitation only, making sure that the right people are getting those invitations. And in the world we live in, there's a lot of complexity around those invitations and specifically the seats, right? So maybe Fashionista is getting invited to a show, but Steph is not actually. Funny enough, you might think she's the only person that works there because we always see her everywhere. And she's one of the famed writers and reporters. Obviously, a lot of times there's other people and she maybe can't go to all the shows, but she can't tell the brand which editor is going to be attending in her place. So we need to have software that's smart enough to welcome anyone from Fashionista to the show. So another editor coming in her place doesn't feel alienated that that seat maybe has someone else's name on it. So this software that we've built for these these fashion shows is really specific to like kind of these ins and outs of how the fashion industry works. And that's really why 90 to 95% of these shows worldwide are using Launchmetrics, because it's what they've grown up on. It has all of these like very specific nuances of how the fashion industry works. And it allows these brands and editors to have a seamless communication, waiting outside in the rain, to have someone tell you what your seat number is. Nowadays, using Launchmetrics, invitations can be sent to someone electronically and physically. There can even be a QR code or an RFID chip in the invitations. So if brands don't want to lose that physical touch or that kind of beautiful aesthetic of part of their show, right? They have that ability to merge the technology into the analog. But it means though, when an editor comes, they can have their seating assignment on their phone. They don't need to talk to anyone if they're in a rush. They can talk to someone if they want. And it allows also the brands then to understand who came and who didn't come, because obviously they're hoping that these editors are coming and they're going to write about their show, or they're going to have a call in after, maybe if it's a glossy magazine for a photo shoot, and they want to make sure they can follow up with the right personal message. So it's our job to make sure that our software is kind of powering all that behind the scenes. It also tells them who hasn't come yet. You know, a lot of times we see celebrities in the front row. Well, maybe the show manager doesn't know who's shown up and who doesn't, because they're so busy getting the models ready, making sure everyone's lined up, that they don't know that Kim Kardashian hasn't arrived yet. Well, it's great because whoever's on the PR team backstage can quickly check the Launchmetrics software to see, okay, I'm looking at the seating chart. 80% of the seats, the people have checked in. So theoretically, the venue is 80% full. And these are all things that feel so unglamorous when you think about a fashion show from a reader's perspective, but it's critical because brands are investing so much money that they just can't afford to get it right. And if you can imagine what a fashion show lasts 10, 20 minutes maximum, that's a really quick turnaround to get people in, out, the right people in and out, make sure they get those photographs, make sure that everything goes off seamless. And you don't want Kim Kardashian showing up halfway through your show. One, that's disruptive, and two, that's a huge missed opportunity. So it's our job to make sure all of that really like kind of boring efficiency stuff is quite efficient.
I think that's something that really just impacts every part of the show, every person who's attending the show, who's behind the scenes at the show. When you're at a show and it's not starting and it seems like, oh, the room is pretty full, like, what are we waiting for? There's always that reason, right? Like there's someone important that they're waiting on. I was at a show this week where the people that we were waiting on was actually the designer's parents. And I think that's just such an interesting way to, it actually is taking the technology and making it more personal, right? Because it is, you're thinking about each individual person, how important they are to the experience of the show. But of course, efficiency is just so crucial. So, I mean, I do think that's part of the reason why those centralized Bryant Park shows made a lot of sense. It's
definitely a battle we have in New York, right? I think the editors loved that everything was centralized. I think the brands struggled with it too, because they wanted that individuality, but you can't have it both ways, right? You can't have the best models at every show, because how are they going to get all around in New York? As you know, probably from going to shows, it's a nightmare.
Yeah. I mean, that was really a great synopsis of the fashion week, the fashion shows, all of the work that Launchmetrics is doing then. But kind of behind the scenes from an editorial perspective, there are so many other ways that we are relying on Launchmetrics. So that's photos, that's data, that's really trend forecasting, trend tracking. I'm sure there's a million other resources too that we have not even fully tapped into. So tell me a bit about sort of the rest of the work and how valuable that is to editorial, trend reporting, and then forecasting for marketing, for future campaigns, for future designs. Like, who is using this information and how? Tell me all of that.
Yeah, of course. Coming right off the bat of the shows, like our photo services team is shooting also some of the biggest shows around the world. And we're making sure that we're servicing that not just back to the brands who are contracting us, but we work with about 1,500 publishers that use those photos, Fashionista being one of them. So happy to see that.
We couldn't do any of our coverage truly without Launchmetrics. In my time in the industry, Launchmetrics has always been the first to get the photos up. When you're working late at night, you just want to get that story up as soon as possible. You want to be the first to get it up. You don't want to be up till 2 a.m. waiting for the photos to come in. Like, that is so valuable. We love Launchmetrics for that reason.
I will pass on the love. I know the team is sweating it out, so I'm sure they're really going to be happy to have some good feedback. But it's interesting that you say that too, because the majority of the coverage for a fashion show comes out within 2 days of when a fashion show takes place. So we always try to stress this to brands because a fashion show is expensive, even if you have the good fortune of being with someone that is sponsoring your show, or of course, over the years, we've had people like IMG, we have new players that come in that are offering free venues, but there's still so many things besides the venue. And as you said too, images are one of those things that, I can have someone I know take the photos, or I can work with this other company, they'll give them to me a few days after because I want them photoshopped. No, if you want press coverage, those photos need to be in the hands of the publications within 48 hours, or you lose 80% of your coverage. 80% of coverage happens within the first 48 hours. And it's a crazy statistic because nowadays everything moves so fast. And if a reader is joining today, you can think of your own Instagram, right? Or your own TikTok. You open it up. What you see today is not what you'll even see tomorrow. I think it's just a really good example of the fast-paced world we live in and how brands need to adjust. And so that's why at Launchmetrics, we're really focused on getting those images to the right people as quick as possible. The other thing that moves so quick, and it's driven by you and your friends in the publishing world, is data. Launchmetrics, I would say about 50% of what we do now is delivering data to the brands that we work with. And because of that, so many great publishers are also coming to us as their data source for their news. Things like, who were the top 10 shows at Fashion Week? When Kim Kardashian did come to my show, what did she generate for me? From an industry perspective, it's important because brands want to know, I saw Steph reporting about this show. Was it really as big as she said it was? Who tuned in? Who cared about it? Is that brand really relevant today? And obviously, it's kind of like why you tune into a reality show, right? You want to see all the behind the scenes. The data kind of gives you the behind the scenes. It was how viral was that image? I heard it was viral, but was it really viral? And the data will say, yeah, this image actually ended up in Canada, India, Sri Lanka, all over the world. And that's critical for brands forecasting, right? So we're in a moment, unfortunately, the economic climate is tight and brands are trying to understand where they should double down and where they should pull back. And the data is a really good indicator for them to understand, okay, I paid a lot for XYZ model to walk on the runway. Did that give me a boost? Oh, well, actually, she walked in someone else's show and posted about that show on her Instagram. And that actually generated for them 10 times more than her just walking in my show. So what was my missed opportunity? Or perhaps it's something like, we stopped investing in influencers and celebrities because we want to be a homegrown brand. What did that mean for my brand? And it really allows brands to better arbitrate their strategies and their budget to where they need to lean in a little bit more. So as much as I think people love and hate data, it's really what is setting the course for brands and how these top executives are kind of reporting on what's working, how they're competing with their competitors. I think the next layer for us that we've been working on a little bit is the qualitative side. So in this moment, of course, over the last decade, we've seen a rise of new voices and new channels. Virality is really this metric we've looked at, or as you guys know, media impact value. And that's how we assign this monetary value, so dollar amount, to every post, interaction, or article. And it's what has allowed us to do these rankings. So it's what allows us to say, this Instagram post by this influencer is worth $200,000 versus a Fashionista article, which is worth $500,000, and that is helpful. I think the question that people have is what builds continuity with my consumer? How do I drive the affinity? Do I believe my values are, and do they align with what the average customer thinks my values are? So this qualitative analysis is something that we're working on, and we've started to release some data on. I think that's the next evolution, mixing that qualitative and quantitative data to understand who your brand really is and how do people perceive it.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. And so I'm curious to know, obviously, Launchmetrics is really at the forefront of technology and data in this industry. Where does AI come in, if at all? What is Launchmetrics looking at in the AI space, and how do you see that factoring in the future?
It almost makes me feel guilty because I have become so numb to AI because we've been working on AI for the last 10 years. The media impact value algorithm that we use to assign the dollar amount to every post, interaction or article is actually an AI-driven algorithm, and we're always training it, right? So it's funny, I had to write an article for this book, and they were asking me about the evolution of metrics. And I was saying, I remember when we launched Media Impact Value with the CFDI, and we were explaining it to some of the designers because we did like a partnership where we analyzed all the shows during the Fashion Week set season. And we were saying, well, media impact value is really specific to our industry because we know a photo is way more valuable than text. So if you have more photos, it drives more like engagement, and engagement is one of the factors that the algorithm takes into consideration to calculate. Thinking about that now, yes, photos are still important, but you would say video, right? Like everybody loves video. That's why TikTok has become so big. That's why Instagram launched Reels. Like that's why YouTube did Shorts. Like there's been all of this kind of result from this change in how consumers consume content. So it's just really funny to think about this evolution that we've even seen there. And so AI has played a really huge role in helping us build an algorithm that changes with how user patterns change so that we can really drill down into what's working and what's not. The other thing that's exciting for us with AI is just that in the world we sit in, there's so much data out there. It's hard to make sense of it. And AI is really helping us dissect and decode. So when I talked about, how we can understand better what consumers think of a brand, do they think it's a modern brand? Do they think it's traditional? Do they think it's a sexy brand, an innovative brand? It really is the AI that's helping that. So if you think about if a brand is generating 20 million of media impact value during Fashion Week, that's hundreds and hundreds of posts, articles, videos, TikToks. There's no way one person, a human, could actually go through and dissect that. It's kind of your opinion too. Like, I feel like this says I'm sexy. This says I'm innovative. There's no way it's going to be accurate. And the nice thing with AI is that we can write prompts that really dissect each article and create this benchmark. So we can say to the AI, based on this analysis, what did you think of the Jacquemus show? Do you think the consumer and the writers writing these articles think it's an innovative brand? Tell me like your take on that. And it's really interesting because it takes that volume that we've had for the quantitative data and really gives it like almost like a more human perspective, even if we're using AI. There are pluses and minuses of AI, but for us, what we've seen is you still need a lot of people like humans to power your AI. We've had to train them on such specificities of our industry that our humans are not going anywhere anytime soon.
Humans are the ones ultimately using that data and analysis to then fuel their marketing, fuel their future designs, all of that. Can you tell me a bit for those who may be just starting out in fashion, those who may be students wanting to get into fashion, like what do you need to know about Launchmetrics? What are kind of the basics and how important is it to know that coming into the industry? What kind of an edge might it give you as an intern coming into, say, an IMG or a fashionista to kind of understand the way that Launchmetrics works?
Yeah, I mean, actually, if you go on the Fashionista careers board, I feel like every week I get a notification that someone's put Launchmetrics experience required. First of all, I would say get an internship, right? Internships definitely will help you get careers. So any internship that offers you real world hands-on experience and isn't looking for someone that has already had a million internships is a great place to start. I think in New York specifically, we don't even look at what you studied. We don't look at what school we do, of course, but the thing that you always look for on an intern's or an entry-level CV is where have they interned, where have they worked. At Launchmetrics, we also offer a lot of webinars where we talk about what our products do, the value. We talk a lot about like the industry landscape. A lot of that industry landscape is the stuff we send to the reporters at Fashionista when they're writing their stories. Fern Malice, who was the director of the CFDI when they founded Fashion Week, always said, read everything you can, learn as much as you can. And I know that sounds so cheesy, but it's true. We have tons of free webinars and resources on our website. Take advantage of that. Sometimes they're just like a 30-minute webinar and really goes through, here's the event tool that Dior uses for their fashion show. Having like a real world visual so that you can go in that interview and say, I haven't personally used it, but I join a ton of their webinars. So I actually have an idea of how it works and the value it brings. That's going to score you a lot of brownie points. And there's going to be a lot of other interns that haven't had the opportunity to use it. I think that is going to get your foot in the door for sure. One thing I think is interesting that we've seen in the landscape, and it's happening everywhere, but I can definitely see why it works well in the States, is the role social media has played, which hearing just that statement feels very generic. Very interestingly, all of our publishers are now leaning into how they drive value with their consumers and their readers through social media. We've had some publications that used to have this like very even split of 50% coming from online, 50% coming from social. But now we see this shift that publishers are also trying to become social media players, and they're generating something like 75% to 80% of the value of their coverage from social media. And that's fair because we wake up, we get on TikTok, we get on Instagram. You want to kind of be where your consumer is, so then they navigate over to your site and then they navigate to their articles. But I think that's kind of a really fun takeaway of what we've seen so far. TikTok is still growing and it's still really important. Last year, more than a third of the media impact value generated on TikTok was through media mentions. So again, this is something that just keeps growing and we're sure it will continue to grow. APAC is still big. South Korea and the Philippines were in the top regions, and I don't expect that to change.
You've been through a lot in this industry. This industry has been through a lot in the time you've been in it. What do you think is kind of the most significant change that you've seen and experienced in your time in the fashion industry, if you can point to one?
I think it's what you started to say about digitization, like how we've gone through all of these periods where digital has played a critical role, but it's not the end all be all. But the thing that I do love about this evolution through digitization is that it's almost democratized our fashion, our industry. If you think back to, again, like when I told you about New York Fashion Week and how we used to fax our invitations in, it was about this insular circle of people in the industry. And I'm not saying those people don't exist anymore, but I think it's such a wider spectrum of who the, let's say, different key players are. And it means that anybody could be a part of that wider circle and be a key player of the industry. Like there's no separation between tech companies and fashion companies, and everything is kind of cool now. So I think that's exciting. It just means that if you look at, like I said, with New York Fashion Week, it used to really be about, we've always had like the Vogue Fashion Fund, right? It really used to be at like about these darlings that were supported by Vogue. There's so many new emerging brands supported by the CFDA and other organizations. So I think really we're quite an inclusive community and we're looking to grow in strength together. So anyone kind of tuning in to listen or anyone thinking about getting into the industry, I think like jump in, volunteer, get an internship. There's a lot of possibility to go around. And I'm excited to see like what the younger generation brings as we kind of evolve to what is next in the fashion industry.
Yeah. I mean, that was an amazing answer. Wow. Yes. So, I mean, honestly, those are all of my questions. I think this is just, I could keep asking you questions probably for the next 3 days, but is there anything that we didn't really cover that you want people to know about your role, about Launchmetrics, or the bigger scope of the industry?
Maybe my like heartfelt closing words are, I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Launchmetrics. I oversee a team of fantastic women who work in offices all over the world. We're all the same, right? There's no hierarchy. Everyone has to roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty. That's what's made me successful in life and what makes me a good manager. Remember, no matter how big or how far you get in your career, you're not bigger than the smallest person. And being kind counts a lot, and people remember that. Even if this is a cutthroat industry, even if New York is tough, and some days it's really, really tough, it doesn't mean that you have to be the person that your parents would not want you to be, or they would be ashamed to hear about you at the dinner table. So someone that you meet today will definitely come back and haunt you later. So kind of keep that in mind as you build your career and continue to go through even the most stressful moments like Fashion Week.
Beautifully said, and just so very true. Well, thank you so much for your time, Allison. It was so lovely chatting with you.
Thanks, you too. Speak soon. Bye.